Steve Bannon, who's the chief executive or former chairman of Breitbart News, now he dubbed this platform, he said this is the platform of the alt-right. This is the media.
Alt-right, A-L-T,
Yeah,
right.
this was
the alternative right
Yeah,
wing.
it's far right, but for the media age. Essentially, if you call it far right, people will go, oh, that's bad. If you call it alt right and you have Richard Spencer basically got punched by the left-wing activist.
Mm-hmm.
He's sponsored by William Regnery through MPI and various other sort of like right-wing think tanks. He gets millions of dollars for him. William Regnery also published a couple of Trump's books, and during the election, he set up automated phone lines in order to promote Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Spencer is the person that coined the phrase alt-right. He said, we are alt-right. And it's essentially a media term that basically softens the concept to make it more palatable. Mm-hmm. But Steve Bannon basically said that Breitbart News, which is the functionary that put out all these fake stories beforehand, he's an ex-US Navy officer. He's described by others as a militarist in love with war. This is not a happy fellow, basically.
Right.
After the military, he went to work on Wall Street for Goldman Sachs because his friend's father was a senior banker there. And later, being sponsored by Robert Mercer, he made a series of apocalyptic right-wing documentaries praising people like Sarah Palin and Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's domestic policy was racist, his economic policy was a failure, his foreign policy amounted to genocide and drug importation, and he committed high treason. So anybody that thinks that Ronald Reagan was a sterling example of an American president needs to go and open a book and read about the guy. Because everything that they say that he did well, he didn't. Okay. Bannon invested $60 million of Goldman Sachs money into IGE. IGE is a computer games company that would basically, if you know, in games like World of Warcraft, you need to like get gold and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, you need to do mundane tasks, which is boring. What they would do is they'd hire gamers to do these mundane tasks and then sell this gold to people for real money.
Okay.
So basically, they're making profit out of nothing.
Right.
It's incredibly clever. The only problem with that is that basically at the time, IGE, the time that Goldman Sachs via Steve Bannon was investing in IGE, it was run by the wanted paedophile Mark Collins Rector and the known paedophile Brock Pierce. If you've seen or you're aware of that documentary, An Open Secret, Brock Pierce and Mark Collins Rector are the two paedophiles that were allegedly connected to Bryan Singer that were involved in that story. And so these are these are friends of Bannon. Mm-hmm. Milo Yiannopoulos, by the way, who's also connected to Breitbart, was still not named those paedophiles he saw raping young twinks at Hollywood parties, which is surprisingly similar to the Bryan Singer, Mark Collins Rector, Brock Pierce allegations. This is very. The third CEO of IGE was also arrested and charged with child sex trafficking, and these are the people that Bannon sort of associates himself with. He's got a history of domestic abuse and refusing to pay child support despite his vast wealth. He was influential in sort of changing the direction of the Tea Party to being more sort of like overtly far right, and was known as the Leni Riefenstahl of the Tea Party. I mean, the whole point of Breitbart, which is basically his Mercer-sponsored Trump-promoting media outlet, is to foster an hysterical fear of anything that's not conservative. Like,
so Breitbart.
Yeah.
So is this knowingly connected to Trump, Breitbart?
Well, it's owned by Robert Mercer, and Robert Mercer was the main financier of the Trump campaign.
But does Trump talk about Breitbart?
Yeah, and InfoWars.
Okay.
They basically have become this whole sort of circular thing where InfoWars will share Breitbart stories, Breitbart will share InfoWars stories, and then Trump will tweet about them. Right. And they're incredibly pro-Trump. And pro-Richard Spencer, and pro-white supremacy.
So before the election then, you think that whoever's backing Trump was trying to mop up the alternative community media, and that's why, say, InfoWars
and Drudge Report
was kind of nudged to the right a bit to line itself with Trump.
Oh yeah.
And then soak up all of his following into
It happened
to get all of these people who wouldn't normally vote to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. By giving them,
Giving them a carrot.
we will create the heroes for them to
We're
follow.
going to sort out 9/11.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they've just completely forgotten about that. And so anything progressive, anything foreign, anything that conforms to a religion other than Christianity, anyone that's not white and fairly well-to-do is categorised as a threat to the very fabric of Western civilization by Breitbart. It's a nationalist paper, and it tends to err towards white folk. The Charles Martel Society, okay, it's a far-right ideology think tank and charitable organisation that gives money to various right-wing organisations. The National Policy Institute. These are basically, again, promoters of far-right ideology. This is where Richard Spencer came from. Richard Spencer is the person that spawned the phrase alt-right. He believes in a completely white ethno-state. Okay, he wants to deport everybody who's not white, as does William Regenry II. He's an admitted white supremacist who wants all non-whites deported from America. He published Trump's book, and during the election he set up automated phone lines.
But they're never going to bring about a government that's going to do all that, are they?
Do what?
Well, that's going to make America a purely white state, this white country.
Maybe not, but this is what these very wealthy people yearn for as an ideal.
All right.
Bannon then basically set up the right-wing think tank GIA. This was financed by Robert Mercer and the Koch brothers, okay, who are, again, usually you mention those people and it's a oh my God, like it's one of those things, and people seem to just sort of like let that slide with this particular administration, as if that's not incredibly suspicious. What the GIA allowed investors, it gives tax-deductible donations, and these were basically used to finance Breitbart. This is technically money laundering, and it's completely illegal, and it's basically to hide the fact that these alternative nodes are actually financed by the financial elite. Mm-hmm. So, with all that in mind, what's Cambridge Analytica? Okay.
You tell me.
Right. Well, Cambridge Analytica started as a company called SCL. SCL is a British-based military psyops organisation. It's connected to the British military and the British military intelligence. It's very cagey about what it does, but it does admit that it's a psychological operations house. Robert Mercer bought into SCL. He basically put a huge amount of money into this military psychological operations company, and they created this firm called Cambridge Analytica, and it's a firm that specialises in data mining and targeting campaign material or propaganda at specific audiences in a manner specifically catered towards the most impact for that specific target group. And basically they hooked up with Aggregate IQ. Aggregate IQ is a data mining company based in Canada. During the run-up to Brexit, Vote Leave, Leave.eu, the DUP and various other people gave huge amounts of money to Aggregate IQ. The reason that's perfectly okay is because Aggregate IQ is Canadian, so it doesn't fall under the purview of the British or European election cycle. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to look at their campaign material, the propaganda, the stuff that they've actually been doing. That's perfectly legal. It's a loophole that allows them to do stuff outside of the UK. Robert Mercer just so happens to own the IP address of Aggregate IQ, so it is a definite node of Cambridge Analytica. But as I say, because they're foreign, it can't really be investigated. Now, SCL used to advertise Aggregate IQ as their Canadian branch, but this was basically removed later, although if you phone their Canadian branch number, you still get through to Aggregate IQ. During the run-up to Brexit, Aggregate IQ was paid to micro-target potential voters via propaganda campaigns via Facebook and social media. What's micro-targeting? Micro-targeting is individualised political messages delivered in the most effective manner to cause the most extreme response. Basically, Aggregate IQ built all the software for Cambridge Analytica. SCL, which is the precursor to Cambridge Analytica, has board members from Marconi Defence Systems, British Military Psychological Operations, the US Marines, and it uses military psyops tactics on domestic populations. It's technically a private domestic company, but it's got all these links to elite weapons manufacturers, psychological operations, the Pentagon, and British military. So essentially what Cambridge Analytica and SCL did is they used psyop tactics on the public in order to influence their political belief and drive their voting tactics.
Right, let me just interrupt you there, Neil. So would this be via Facebook?
It was entirely via Facebook.
Right, so, okay, so those companies have devised some software that will make appear on your Facebook interaction messages, because they know that you're going to vote this way. Well, they know that you like this, that, or the other. So they're going to target you. They're going to target you with some information to sway your vote. Yeah.
What they did was they bought everybody's data from Twitter, Facebook, and other social media, and then they sent algorithms through this.
So let me ask you this question: they've got data that they've derived from social media. Yeah. The next step is to then use that data in order to manipulate those people. Yeah. Now, how can these private companies put their software into Facebook's own backend?
Well, I'll explain. The goal is to capture every single aspect of a voter's information. So what they do is they spread propaganda and plausible lies, fake news, that type of thing, things that will get you riled up. They take millions of...
you often find this on Facebook. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Vote on this, vote on that. They're constantly fishing for information from you all the time on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, basically what they did was they took everyone's information and they examined it. So what pages have you been on? What have you liked? What have you disliked? Let's look at your conversations. Let's see if there's any themes running through this. And they did incredible analysis of this. And
which can be done in software.
Oh yeah, and what they did was they figured out, let's take you, right? We look at Richard Hall's Facebook page. What makes Richard angry? Okay, what makes Richard angry is, I don't know, white pieces of A4 paper. Next day, an advert would appear on your Facebook page saying, because we also know that you don't like traffic wardens. Traffic wardens are flooding the UK with white pieces of paper. Do you want this to stop? Then vote Trump.
Yeah.
Vote Brexit.
Yeah. So it's targeting that person. Micro-targeting something that person feels passionate about.
Yeah.
And they're saying, well, our candidate will solve your individual problem.
Yeah.
Now, so here's the question, Neil. How can these companies then... How are they allowed to have their software integrated into Facebook software?
They're not allowed to do it. They're allowed to buy the company. Right, okay. Now here's where it gets strange, because during the beginning...
they're allowed to buy which company?
They're not allowed to do this. During the election, basically what happened was they're allowed to buy the data, but they're not allowed to influence it, because this is party political influencing, and this has to be...
Right. So how are these companies getting that micro-targeting advert?
Because they did it through Canada, because they did it through Aggregate IQ, which means that it can't be investigated. Now, during the beginning of the campaign...
just interrupt you again. So Aggregate IQ then, they've got some connection with Facebook then, have they?
No, Aggregate IQ is the Canadian data portion of this data mining company, Cambridge Analytica.
Right.
During the beginning of the campaign, Cambridge Analytica and their chairman and various people were really, really proud that they were on part of the Leave Brexit campaign.
Right.
They says if this is successful, we're going to apply the same tactics to getting Donald Trump elected. They later admitted that they used micro-targeting, fake news, etc., as a precursor to get Donald Trump into office. Right. Now, it came out during the campaign that this is illegal, because if you're paying this company, you have to declare it, and there's only so much money you're allowed to put into political campaigns, and it's totally illegal. So all of a sudden, Cambridge Analytica turned around and says, oh yeah, no, we did it all for free. In fact, we didn't do anything. In fact, actually, the only reason we did it is because basically Nigel Farage is keen on Brexit, and Robert Mercer's his friend. There's a current, basically, this was exposed in The Observer, and Cambridge Analytica says, well, no, that's completely not true, and we're going to sue you. And The Observer turned around and says, fine, we've got all the quotes. You admitted that you were involved. You can't sue us now. For some reason, nobody's looked into this highly illegal manipulation.
So is there an interface then between Facebook and Aggregator IQ?
No, they just bought all your data.
Yeah, okay, so they've got so Facebook give them a load of data, which enables them to figure out how everyone ticks who's on Facebook. They know what they know what message that person would love to see in order to influence their vote, yeah?
Yeah.
How does that company then get Facebook to put that message on that individual person's...
You just set up a SOC account and just send them a message.
All right.
Yeah.
So they set up. So it involves setting up a whole load of fake Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
Right.
Or just as we were talking about earlier, you put that information out, and somebody spreads it, and somebody spreads it, and somebody spreads it. If you're friends with somebody on Facebook, the likelihood is there's 2 or 3 people at least on there that have very similar ideas. So that's a block campaign.
Right. You've answered the question there. They have a whole load of SOC accounts. That they own.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there could be thousands of accounts.
It's connected to also to Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's data mining corporation. That's incredibly is part of this sort of increasing panopticon of like total non-privacy. All your information is utilised and is used against you. And as I say, Cambridge Analytica now works directly with the Pentagon.
Do you think that data includes the private messages?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Everything. There is no privacy on the internet.
So a Canadian company bought from Facebook a whole load of data that are being mined from Facebook, and it includes private messages, say, between me and you or anyone, really?
Yeah. They bought this data and they specifically analysed it to see what makes you angry, and then they found out what makes you angry, and they utilised that to manipulate you into voting a particular way. Nigel Farage, Robert Mercer, Steve Bannon have been friends and colleagues since 2002. Breitbart set up its office in the UK to promote and support UKIP, which is Nigel Farage's thing. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that basically you voted in the wrong way. It just means, or that you didn't have a good reason for it. It just means that if you voted for Trump or for Brexit, that these millionaires and billionaires that have connections to military psychological operations, the Pentagon, the White House, US military and British military just so happen to want you to vote that way.
Just to interject again, Neil, I have been sent a book by a chap who was at one of my lectures. He's written a book, I forget the name of it, I can put it on the screen, but the central theme in there is that Brexit was engineered in order for some very large business interests to make a whole load of money.
Yep, probably. I said this before, again, like I have no strong opinion on whether it's good or bad. Voting in Brexit was like being a child and choosing a boarding school. Doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what you decide, you're going to get screwed by an older, richer person. So that's what it is. Like, the DUP gave money to Cambridge Analytica. They're doing quite well now, aren't they? Strange. And they have a similar hideous right-wing ideology.
I described it as deciding which dog turd you're going to stand in.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's another way. In the 2050 PR Week, Cambridge Analytica Director of Programme Development Brittany Kasier stated, Cambridge Analytica only started working with Leave EU more recently. The firm's teams of data scientists and analysts would be enabling targeting messaging by understanding why certain things worry people. Cambridge Analytica, Leave EU confirmed that Cambridge Analytica were helping them map the British electorate. Andy Wigmore explained, a Facebook like was the most potent weapon because using artificial intelligence as we did tells you all sorts of things about that individual and how to convince them with what sort of advert. And you know that there would be other people in their network who liked what they liked, so it could spread. The computer never stops learning and it never stops monitoring. When he was told that was creepy, Andy Wigmore said, no, it is. That's why I'm not on Facebook.
Right. So someone's got a fear of worms and they make that known on Facebook, and then sometime later they get a message saying that Trump's going to sort out all the worms.
In a very, very simple way, So basically people were manipulated by billionaires connected to UK and US military, and they used fear and psyop tactics by mining your data and social media posts through like complete surveillance in order to manipulate your feelings. That's
when you take up a Facebook account, you create it. There's nothing in there that says we have a duty to not pass on your data to a third party.
That's how they make money. That's what Facebook is. Facebook is a data mining. I mean, Peter Thiel, who runs Palantir, was the initial financer of Facebook.
But there's nothing in that agreement when you sign up to Facebook to say that the data will stay within Facebook.
On the contrary, it's the opposite as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
So when you posting private messages on Facebook, folks, Facebook have every right to give it to whoever they want or sell it to whoever they want to for money for political purposes.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even talking about the JTRIG and GCHQ and so the data. This is
private.
This isn't
government spying.
Campaigning.
This isn't government spying. It's private companies doing this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I believe that they have actually got connections to the government.
Yeah.
But yeah, ostensibly, this is perfectly above board, perfectly legal, and not at all sinister. After the success of Brexit, Cambridge Analytica, basically Robert Mercer said that Brexit was a test to see if the mood was right to get somebody like Trump in, which again leads to my concept that there's a coup of some description going on, whereby basically these people who have a certain ideology want to get their position.
So they used the same tactics to make Brexit win as they did to get Trump in then?
Yeah. After Brexit, they basically decided that they would use in America they admitted doing it. In England, they admitted it and then later denied it. Okay, in America, they admitted that was what was the point. Data mining, micro-targeting, manipulation.
So what about, if we just stay on Brexit a second, what about the viewpoint that joining Europe is a step towards a world government and that the most powerful people on the planet are marching the UK and other countries in Europe to a world government? So surely they would be using those techniques to get us into Europe.
Maybe they would. I don't know. Or say, I don't know. I'm not saying that you made the wrong vote. I'm not saying you made the right vote. All I'm saying is a very specific class of very wealthy people with very specific connections to US military industrial complexes, the Pentagon and British psychological operations wanted you to vote that way.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a level of sophistication so much higher than the guy in the street who used to stop you and say, "Will you be voting Conservative, sir? What is the issue that upsets you the most? Do you want this? That's how they used to do it, isn't it?
It's hidden. It's underhanded. That's the frightening part.
And it could potentially have information that you would never dream of even sharing to anyone, isn't it?
Totally. So, absolutely, totally. I mean, this is totally the problem with it. But this is not the first time that something like this has happened as well, right? Okay, it's slightly different, but this is what I was trying to explain. If they will do this in Australia, very wealthy people have got agendas, and they'll do it in Europe, and they'll do it in America, and they'll do it in England as well. And again, it's not to criticise anyone that's voting in a particular way. It's just curious that these people wanted you to vote in that way.
I mean, another point perhaps to make, Neil, is that there's only a certain percentage of people that are on Facebook. A lot of people who are, say, on Facebook, they might use it once a month. They're not regular users. So this has been done only using a section of the population.
Don't think they're on Twitter, you don't think they're on 4chan, you don't think they're on Reddit, don't think they're on 8chan. And with some of those, 4chan, for example, you preach it to the converted. It takes a very small amount to get somebody in the perfect way. We've just found out about this, okay? Because they admitted it in America and got caught out in England. So, yeah, I'm sure you're absolutely right. It's only a very, that's not the broadest spectrum.
Generally, you're younger voters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But, get them young. Indoctrinate them, and it's very difficult to change their views. But as I say, this isn't the first time that underhanded tactics. This is very slightly different. But I'd just like to talk a little bit about LulzSec or Anti-Sec and the FBI and Stratfor. Stratfor is it's a private. It's like a sort of private CIA almost. It's a defence contractor that is technically a private company, but it has interactions with American government.
Probably full of geeks. No?
I don't. Well, yeah, but like some dangerous ones as well. Like,
right.
you know, if the CIA is full of geeks, it's a similar type of thing. Now, basically, there was this hacker collective that was an offshoot of Anonymous. Obviously, we know Anonymous, and this was called Lulzsec. Lulz as in laugh out louds. Lulzsec. It was a hacker collective, and it was an offshoot of Anonymous. They were so good that Lulzsec actually hacked and shut down the CIA's website.
Yeah,
at one point.
and just to make a point, because we spoke about Assange and about how Assange was a very proficient hacker and he had all of these charges against him. And it's my belief that he was then recruited at some point because he was useful to them. And I think that seems to be what happens to a lot of the good hackers. They will then work for, because I think there was a chap named, I forget his name, who went to work for DARPA, who was a hacker. So anyone who's going to be a danger to whatever, a hacker, they're going to get recruited. They are going to get recruited and offered that to work for.
It's certainly one way. I mean, there's obviously been instances where hackers used to do that. They used to basically find back doors and then tell the company who found this back door, pay me and I'll show you how to close it up or whatever. One of the members of Lulzsec was this very prominent hacker by the name of Sabu, S-A-B-U. Now, he was one of the very first people to suggest and promote Occupy Wall Street. He was also involved alongside a very famous hacker called Jeremy Hammond in the hacking of Stratfor. Now, Stratfor, as I said, is a private intelligence contractor with shady links to the US government. Bizarrely, the editor-in-chief at InfoWars was an intern at Stratfor for a year and a half. And InfoWars started in exactly the same town as Stratfor at exactly the same time. And Alex Jones has been accused, I don't know if that's true, but Alex Jones has been accused of being connected to Stratfor. Just before Occupy Wall Street, Sabu formed another, even more hardcore hacker group, which was called Antisec. And via this organisation, Sabu was basically training people to hack large corporations. And on Christmas 2011, Antisec released a load of emails that were hacked from Stratfor. Stratfor is like a non-governmental CIA. They do private investigation work for military contractors and government and organisations. One of the things that Antisec did was they stole credit card numbers from Stratfor's clients and actually gave $700,000 away to charity. Like, now this was actually, again, had to be returned, but it's quite Robin Hood-esque, isn't it? Now, the Stratfor emails revealed that Goldman Sachs and Stratfor were looking at doing a possible insider trading scheme, which would have been illegal. Stratfor was attempting to smear a journalist by promoting the false idea that they were an Al-Qaeda operative. The Bank of America had employed techniques to spy on and collect data about Occupy Wall Street activists. And Stratfor was monitoring and reporting on dissent against the Dow Chemical Company, particularly due to their response to the Bhopal chemical explosion that killed thousands 25 years ago. So, like, even 25 years afterwards, they're monitoring people to see anti-sentiment against major blue-chip corporations. One of the things that the emails exposed was that Trapwire is actually used in far more cities and venues than had been previously admitted. Trapwire is yet another of these Palantir-type panopticon data mining things. It's involved in CCTV. If you've ever seen that film A Scanner Darkly, at the beginning where he's walking along and the CCTV camera picks him up and they do a facial recognition and they get his entire history up, and his criminal record and all aspects of his life that's been data mined from everything else, and then you can immediately tell that it's a tracking device and stuff like that. That's what Trapwire is. Trapwire is basically it's in many American cities, despite the fact that they actually deny that it is. Now, there was only one problem with this whole scenario, is that during the entire time that this went on, Sabu was an FBI informant. Okay, so Sabu was arrested on June the 7th, 2011. The following day, on June the 8th, he turned FBI informant. Antisec was formed on June the 19th. So the FBI formed AntiSec, and they immediately started training other hackers to hack large corporations and encouraging them to hack large corporations. Then in September, Cebu is instrumental in promoting Occupy Wall Street, which means that the FBI were instrumental in promoting Occupy Wall Street.
And was that done via Facebook to promote it?
It was done by Twitter.
Right.
There was also an advert in a magazine called Adbusters as well.
Because I know that in the UK, the Occupy movements were started on Facebook.
Yeah.
A lot of it was done
with social media, absolutely.
Yeah, social media,
because,
social media.
Well, it was, I think originally it was kind of supposed to be connected to Anonymous, really.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what's interesting is that during the Occupy Wall Street, Anonymous were saying they were going to hack all these banks and shut down Wall Street.
Right.
Cebu intervened, told them to stop it.
Right. So now I do know one or two people who were involved in the Occupy movement in the UK, and I would say that those people were genuine people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Who were wanting to change the banking system and get rid of corruption. And
this is not
really good motives.
Of those people, just like it's not a criticism of voters of Brexit or Donald Trump. It's just.
But you think that that the whole concept and the idea came from the intelligence agencies or the FBI for Occupy. So it was just a little test.
It would appear so.
That will be quite annoying news to some people who were involved and committed months of their lives living on the street thinking that they were doing something.
Well, again, then AntiSec also hacked Stratfor. So the FBI essentially hacked Stratfor. This led to the arrest of Jeremy Hammond and the arrest of various other people.
So let's just look at the bigger picture then. Why would American intelligence and possibly British intelligence kind of set up these protest movements?
See who's going to go for it. See who's going to go along with it. It's another data mining program.
Right. And you think that they're maybe practicing their responses, maybe how to respond to
entirely possible. Like, I'll guarantee that basically every single person that was at Occupy, any of the occupiers, you've been photographed and your details are on the line or on a file somewhere. You know, it could be just as simple and straightforward as in the event of a popular uprising, whose door do we need to kick in first? Or something like that. You just don't know. Again, I'm not sure of the motivation specifically. I don't know how Mercer and Farage and people like that are going to make money from Brexit. I mean, they're hedge fund managers, so you know they make money from chaos. I don't understand why William Regenary exactly wants a white ethno-state in America, but they do, and they're desperately trying to sort of promote this. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I just know that I'm very troubled by the amount of underhanded manipulation that's gone into all of these things, and specifically because many people, as you say, have really gone for this wholeheartedly. And this is not a criticism of those people, right? Okay, this is not a criticism of their cause or their opinions or anything like that. This is just rich men get really rich in chaos, and then they're creating chaos.
Right. So do you think there's some interplay between, let's call it the business world, for want of a better word, these multi-billionaires who are trying to influence the outcomes of the election and Brexit, because they can, because they're so rich and they're crafty, right? Do you think there's a link between them and the security services?
Probably.
Are they doing each other favours?
I would imagine so, because as I said,
the security services might suggest this to one of these oligarchs. You do that, scratch your back.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of criticism that's laid out against George Soros. Some of it is warranted, some of it is slightly thin. Like, he's given money to, say, Tides, which is a charitable organisation that was then distributed, and certain charities in Ferguson, certain Occupy, Adbusters for one, where the Occupy Wall Street thing was paid for via a Tides thing. It's not a direct line in the same way that Mercer is. But what is true is that George Soros, for example, is connected to the Carlyle Group, and he was instrumental in promoting the similar types of things during the intervention into the former Yugoslavia. Like, he was spreading sort of like pro-US or anti-whatever sentiment via his sort of civic causes and stuff like that.
Well, these are the players who are really manipulating the outcomes of things like this.
Absolutely.
And we're led to believe it's Boris Johnson leading the campaign for this or that, or whoever they're just minions and pawns, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're people that have positioned themselves to make a lot of money, basically. You know, perhaps they believe in that actual cause. Okay, I don't actually think they do. I think it's a sales pitch. But yeah, that's certainly the case. There's very, very wealthy people connected to these institutions, and they, for whatever reason, are manipulating people to act and react in a particular way that is ultimately going to be beneficial to them, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
Right. And so where does that leave, let's say, the UK Parliament, like Jeremy Corbyn or Tim Farron, although he's not there anymore, and I think I know why. Let's say Jeremy Corbyn got elected.
Yeah.
Right. This is all still there, isn't it? All of this sort of manipulation behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean,
how can you see any of this being sort of gotten rid of, or this sort of control using nefarious methods?
No, and if the wrong person gets in, like in Australia, they'll get him out.
Yeah.
That's the terrifying thing. Like, you know, there's so much manipulation going on.
Yeah.
And what they're doing at the minute is they're being very, very clever because of the mechanisms of social media and stuff like that, making people think that they've come to these realizations on their own.
I'm not trying to scare you out there, but you just think, including your private communications with Facebook and Twitter and all the others, you just think of all the information that you have output into that computer screen about your life.
Yeah, anything you do on the internet and on your phone is public.
And your phone.
Yeah, it's public.
Yeah. And someone can buy that information.
Yeah, and they do, and then they use it against you.
Right. Okay. All right. And Neil, is there anything else you want to add on that?
No, I think we've done enough.
Right. Okay. Remember, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.